So women often will come to me and they will think in extreme black and white terms. So they'll challenge me. Oh, Dr. Hawkins, so you tell me I have to divorce him. No, I didn't say that. I'm not even using the word divorce. Oh, then I have to stay, right? Totally. I have to stay and just put up with it. And that's all. I mean, it's either one or the other, right? No, it's not either or. No, there are many, many possibles in between. And this is revolutionary for a woman to think like this. Like, there are some other possibilities.
Sometimes the story we tell ourselves is not really true. Sometimes the story others tell about us is not really true. Here on today's Heartlift with Janelle, we are going to learn how to rewrite our story. So pick up your favorite pen and journal, grab a cup of something delicious, and start your heart-lifting journey towards living a meaningful life.
Today on the podcast, we are welcoming Dr. David Hawkins, author of Why Marriage Counseling Fails. Is the problem the marriage or the counselor? I really wanted to talk to Dr. Hawkins today because marriage and family systems are a huge part of my work, and it's a huge part of what our community here cares deeply about. Dr. David Hawkins is a clinical psychologist who has brought healing and restoration to thousands of marriages and individuals since he began his work in 1976. He is passionate about helping couples heal marriage wounds and rediscover deeper connection and intimacy. Yes. He's the founder of the Marriage Recovery Center and a best-selling author of over 30 books, including When Pleasing Others is Hurting You. Yes, I've read that. And When Loving Him is Hurting You, and Dealing with the Crazy Makers in Your Life. And I read that one. So long ago, it seems, but not that long ago. So we welcome him today to our very, very much needed conversation about marriage. And we're here celebrating moms and mental health. So I can't wait to open this conversation up. I did want to read this from his book. Perhaps you can see that there is no need to minimize problems. Suffering alone and in silence is a choice you make. It's really true that in one way or another, we do all need help. But first, we must start with the premise that we're all undertrained and ill-prepared, feel undeserving, and perhaps the biggest obstacle, have no idea how to really access help. It's time for us all to stop hiding in shame, withdrawing in silence, or struggling alone to cope with the immense challenges of love and marriage. Arriving at the belief and understanding that we all need help. Boy, it's taken me a long time to actually, these are my words, say that out loud, that I need help and it's okay to need help. And admitting that marriage is difficult, well, that's all actually quite freeing. When you stop your isolation and fully understand that marriage itself is difficult, you are in a place to receive help. Welcome to today's Heartlift with Janelle. And today, as I have already told you, Heartlifters, we have Dr. David Hawkins, and we are going to talk all about why marriage counseling fails. It's his newest book. And as I just said to Dr. Hawkins before we began, his book about crazy makers changed my life back in the day. And I just encourage you to get that one as well. But maybe we'll come back and talk about that another time. But today,
that'd be good.
Yes. Oh my goodness. We are talking about why marriage counseling fails. Is it the problem of the counselor or the marriage? And I'm going to interject, is it just a system? Could it be a church system as well that really doesn't allow us to sometimes say we're having problems? But coming from a certified coaching, and I do a lot of marriage and family systems, Dr. Hawkins, this is near and dear to my heart. And I want to get better too. I do want to get better. So why this book and why right now? Because you've been in practice. I told everyone, you've had over 30 books. You've been in practice for a moon and a go.
Yeah.
Why now?
Well, I mean, the why now, I don't have any fancy answer for you, Janelle, about why now, other than I've been at this a long time and everybody is frustrated. Yes. Clients are frustrated. Counselors are frustrated. The system isn't working. So, the book comes right out and says, okay, is it the client? It is. Is it the counselor? It is. Is it the system? It is. And so everybody, and marriage is such a complex and difficult thing. And so getting help shouldn't be this hard, but it is. It is. You're working through a maze and an amazing number of obstacles. And so, I mean, why now? Because I've been at this for 40 years. And I look to my left and right and I see couples still floundering, looking to try to get the best help possible and not getting it. Yeah. And I see counselors trying to do the best work that they can and frankly, not really doing it. So I hope the book dials everybody up and helps us to navigate this maze so that couples and the system can work together and really help couples get the help that they need so that their relationship can flourish and not flounder.
Yeah. And as a counselor, coach, whatever you want to call me, mental health practitioner, because I do not have a license. I didn't go that route. I went back and got my degree in my 50s. So it just was a journey. I know I'm not done. I can't wait to keep going. But I know this book is going to be my first line when I have an inquiry for an intake for marriage counseling. I'm going to say, well, I want you to read this book first, or at least peruse it and listen to this podcast and assess whether you're ready to do the work that's necessary. Because that's something I see on the end of the counselor end or the therapist end is that, people don't do the necessary work. And I remember I wanted to share with you and get your opinion. I'll be married 38 years this August.
Congratulations.
And give God the glory. I know it's so great. Okay. But when I first got my diamond back in 83, I remember we went to a small church and this woman walked up and she grabbed my hand and she looked at my ring and she went, "Girl, honey, that just is a symbol of hard work." And I was like, I was just brand spanking new engaged. I was all got my nails painted. I'm showing my ring. And I thought deflation right away. Yeah. But of course, 38 years later, she's right. She's right. Right?
Yep. Yeah. Well, it's hard work.
It is.
It really is hard work. I don't think at the beginning, when we say I do and all that good, you know all about this. We've got stars in our eyes and love is blind. And so we think it's just, all it takes is love. All you got to do is love and kind of just put one foot in front of the other and it'll all pan out. Yeah. Well, no, it doesn't all pan out. It is the most difficult thing perhaps that any of us can do. So why do you think
why is that? On an elemental level, why is that? Just refresh us.
Sure. Yeah, because we're all very, 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 that's 4 varies, human. So human means, look, when we pull the veil back, behind the veil, when we look at really what's David Hawkins really like? What's he really like to live with? What's Janelle really like to live with? What is Joe? What's Jennifer? What are they really like to live with? When you sort of take off the facade and you look at the, really this person, Joe, blame shifts. She withdraws. He gets angry over little trifles. She gets snippy. Anyway, so all these little things, they all add up. And then, my goodness, and if they don't have and this is what you do for a living, it's what I do for a living, if they don't have a way to metabolize and resolve these situations, if they're not growing together,
Yes.
then they're becoming further and further and further apart. And by the time they get to you, of course, there is a massive wall between them. They can barely see over the wall to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And what is in that wall? All these hurts and wounds and harms done that nobody else can see.
No, and a lot of times we don't even know. Like if it's a trauma-informed wound, it's stuck in the subconscious, the amygdala. We don't know either. True. I mean,
exactly. So we withdraw. So we become turtles. We withdraw into our shells, or we erupt angrily at some trifle, or we fight. Let's see, what did we all learn here? We fight, we flight, we freeze.
Yeah.
We don't.
Yeah.
And whatever.
Yeah, whatever. Mm-hmm.
So we do by the way, any of those things done repeatedly. So fighting, of course, done repeatedly causes irreparable damage. Well, I don't want to say irreparable. We'll talk about reparation looks like.
That'll be good. I'd love to come back to that actually.
Yep. But if you flight repeatedly, if you freeze repeatedly, just like, okay, I'm just going to go with the flow. I'm going to not say a word here. I so much want to say something, but I'm not going to because it won't be handled. So we repress this stuff.
Walk on eggshells, right?
And now the wall gets thicker and bigger. And all the while, we're doing soccer practices and band practices and putting meals on the table. We're doing life. And so I have any number of women, and maybe you've heard this story. I'm sure you've heard this story too, where a woman will come to me after 30 years of marriage and she'll look back and go, I don't know how I got here. I mean, I was doing soccer practice and I was supporting his business and I was living life and I was going to Christmas celebrations and the kids' plays and I was doing life and I didn't know that I was growing more and more and more distant from him. And now it's all cumulative.
Yeah, and they've all left the nest, or they're older and they're never home. Right.
And now she comes to you and to me, or he comes to you or me, and they say, I don't know how I got here, but we're in a world of hurt, a world of hurt.
Yes.
And then you and I are given the insurmountable, just about insurmountable task. Fix this, fix this horrible mess. So anyway, that's how we get there, Janelle. It's rare that anybody is trying to create damage and harm, even though you hear people say, I think they're just trying to.
Right. On a rare occasion, there's going to be the issue of domestic abuse or someone who's narcissistic truly, or has a psychological disorder. There will be those cases for sure. But I think most of us, we're talking to most of us today, we're just trying to do the very best we can, even though we're exhausted and COVIDed and all of the above things that have been going on. And so there is just, that saying, just don't get on my last little nerve. Well, I'm not even sure we have a last little nerve right now. It's pretty thin. Right. And so I think my experience has been with the couples that if I do or say anything, it's just going to all blow up. And what I hear most of all, you can tell me, which I think is really a subject that I want you to help us broach today, which is really not on your suggested, list. So you can say, oh no, I'm not going there. Is the couple that says, I don't want to break up my family.
Oh.
Though it's really damaging and even sometimes toxic, I don't use that word lightly. Can it be more damaging, to a family system if a couple stays together merely for the children while they're in the home?
Well, the woman I was talking to you about that looks back after 30 years of marriage or 20 years of marriage or 35 years, anyway, a great number, many years of marriage. She's done soccer practice. She's gone to church. She sings in a choir. She does all these different things.
Yes.
And all the while, through the power of denial, that's another topic, by the way. But anyway, through the power of denial, we tell ourselves, I can
do this.
I don't know. I can do this. It's not so bad.
I can buck up.
Because my goodness, think about the cost here. If I decide to really separate, there's another topic, by the way, separation.
We want to have you back already.
The importance of, I'm writing more, Janelle, about the power of a temporary separation.
Yes.
You bring up that word separation and people
panic.
No, I can't.
Speak to us, please.
Well, so women often will come to me and they will think in extreme black and white terms. So they'll challenge me. Oh, Dr. Hawkins, so you tell me I have to divorce him? No, I didn't say that. I'm not even using the word divorce. Oh, then I have to stay, right? Totally, I have to stay and just put up with it, and that's all. It's either one or the other, right?
Mm-hmm. Either or.
No, it's not either or. No, there are many, 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 many possibles in between. Mm-hmm. And this is revolutionary for a woman to think like this. Like,
it is.
Really? I can, there are some other possibilities. There are. And before we even talk about those, I say to her, I want you to, back to your point about through the power of denial, she will sit and tell herself it's not so bad. Yes. While she enables this destructive behavior. Mm-hmm. Well, I can put up with his blowing up periodically. I can put up with his drinking or his drug use or his workaholism
or adultery or vice versa. We're not being sexist here. Vice versa, because I have known women to do the same.
Exactly. And so I have women, and I have women come to me, and they come to you, and they'll say this to me. Well, I'm supposed to be long suffering. I'm supposed to just hang in there, aren't I? And First Peter says, without a word, you will win them to the Lord. And so I'm supposed to just, I know he's got a pornography addiction, but he's told me he will quit. I know he's using drugs, but he's told me he'll quit. He's told me he has to work 75 hours a week, but he's told me he will. And so I'm supposed to do this, right?
I think particularly if I can interject and get your opinion, because you've been doing this through 40 years. So even in that, Dr. Hawkins, I believe you have seen a massive shift, I would think, generationally, because I know I have 3 adult children, and, there are times where they're like, we just go to marriage counseling to get a check-in. To check up, I'm like, oh, bravo. That's amazing. Like, I'm so freaking proud of my kids for doing that. Yeah. They're just making sure, getting the maintenance, doing that kind of work. But I think that in the past 40 years, especially in my generation of women in the evangelical world, if we want to use that word, it's kind of has a buzzkill on it these days, but, or a church system or Christians, however you want to say that, there was that big D divorce word that, you just couldn't utter. And there have been such reform and change happening, but I know that my women my age are still stuck there, and so we do feel like we need to stick it out and persevere, and we will get our reward in heaven for that. In the meantime, there's a whole lot of unhealthy stuff going on that's impacting the next generation.
So, and more I find myself, Janelle, talking to women and men about that what about all the harm that has led up to thoughts of divorce or actions toward divorce or the separation? What about taking ownership and take responsibility for the damage that's being done that leads one to even think about divorce?
Yeah.
So back to another topic, Janelle, the topic of intervention. So if we as clinicians, if we think in terms and we educate people and we say to them, look, I want you to really, really take stock of what's happening. I want you to really look at what's happening in your marriage, in your family, in your church, just take stock and really think about what's happening. And are you enabling something really destructive to happen?
Oh, that's
and
good.
If you don't enable, then what does a little intervention look like? What does another level of intervention look like? What is a higher level of interventions? And I don't have to tell you this, Janelle, those that are listening, interventions work.
They do.
Now, do they work 100% of the time? No. But I'm going to give you I'm off on a little bit of a tangent.
I love it. I really hear the cry of so many hurting people.
I want to give you a factoid that might shock you.
Okay.
Here it is. So in my 40 years of practice, I have never... Oh, I already gave you the answer. Here's the question. I already gave you the answer. Oh,
Thank you. I won't fail the test.
Of a woman who has said, I'm going to pull apart from you, husband, because of XYZ addiction. I'm going to pull. And this woman has said, I don't know. I mean, this is scary to pull apart.
So scary.
It's scary to do an intervention. And it is. Yeah. So now you already know the answer, but here's the question that I give to a woman. What percentage do you think, when I have walked through with a woman an intervention where she's done something, she's pulled apart for a week, 2 weeks, some number, she's pulled apart. What percentage, you already know the answer here, what percentage of men have walked away and said, good riddance, glad to be done, don't want to change at all, goodbye. Well, does it shock you, Janelle, to hear? Right now in my practice, I have 3, 4, 5 women, and I'm not on your broadcast to promote separation.
No, we are not, but we are talking about the stuff that's real and that's happening. Zero
times have I seen a man walk away and say, it's okay. I'm willing to let go of the family and the marriage and the estate and the dog and the cat and the family and the home and the zero. So I say that to women to be encouraging, that I actually don't know exactly, but I can imagine how difficult it is for you to think about intervening into this pornography addiction, this drug addiction, this sex addiction, this and that. Anyway. Yeah. So just know to your listeners, from my vantage point, interventions are highly, highly effective. And so anyway, but you can do many interventions by saying, look, I'm going to speak about what's going on in my marriage. I'm going to talk about it. Yes. You will not like it, but I'm going to talk. So anyway, it doesn't have to be a horrific intervention. It can be a step-by-step process. And
that intervention to you, because to me, it's almost like an intervention can be a separation. And I remember back in the day, Dr. James Dobson, which many of our listeners won't even remember or know who he is. But I do remember him even saying that there are times you have to take a 6-month, 9-month time of separation, which was aghast back in the day. We're talking, whoa, that's just scandalous. But I remember it so clearly. And, but I think that is that the primary, so 2 questions here. The fear of that, is that one of the greatest hindrances? Like for either, because I honestly have had husbands whose wives have had the affair and done the offense, not just the man. But today we are talking primarily to women, but what does that look like when you tell us to have an intervention? What does that look like? Just maybe the first little step for someone who's like right there and they're so afraid, but. Sure. Well,
Janelle, I want to honor the fear. I want them to, that's even a step.
Yeah.
It's a step in the right direction to say to yourself, this is scary. What I try to do is to say your worst fear. Now, remember what he's saying. So he's adding to her fear.
Without a doubt.
Because he is saying, you do that, and I'll
cut you off, baby.
It won't go well for you. It'll be, if you take a step out, separation always leads to divorce.
Oh, I feel the shame there. Yes.
And if you do that to me, I'll tell everybody that it was, so
I'll gaslight you.
I'll guess you will wish you hadn't done it. Which now, what does that tell us? What does that tell a woman? What I wanted to tell the woman is, he's really trying to say he's scared out of his wits.
Yes.
Now, he's not going to say those words. He's not going to say, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I can't be alone.
He's not going to say that stuff, but that's what he's saying. And so then I say to the woman, see, that really means you have some leverage here. Leverage isn't a bad thing if you're leveraging it for a good cause and a good reason. So yes.
Well, I like to call it agency. Like it's using your autonomy. Sure. It's using your personal agency, because so many of our, all of us, I don't know all of us, but so many of my clients grew up in a trauma-informed childhood situation where they didn't have any agency.
Yes.
And so I feel like one of my primary tenets that I try to speak about here in this community is that we now have agency in all of the right, holy, healthy ways. I have a voice. I can use my voice, and my voice equates value, worth, and dignity. So
I love it.
Honor yourself by using that now. You couldn't use that. And maybe you couldn't use that in your 5th year of marriage because you didn't have it yet, or your 10th year. But you're here with me to get agency so that you can possess a sense of self that stands up for yourself, right?
I think that's so true and so powerful. And that's one of the things we can do. That was one of the things that I recommend for counselors, is to understand we really have some influence here. We can really help people become courageous to take whatever the next step is. They don't have to take 10 steps. What's the next best step for you? What's the next best? I think it was Gigi Graham or somebody that said enough light for the next step ahead or something.
I love that. I call that the flashlight principle. When you have a flashlight that's just that small, it's like just shine it on the ground and that'll be all that you really need. It's the light of your path for that moment.
Enough light just for that next. And then what happens, we see our clients have more and more courage. And the more courage they have, the more like, and I want to comment on another thing that I notice, Janelle, and it is this. Women come to me at different stages of clarity. It's really exciting for me. I'll work with anybody wherever they are.
Heartlifters, we're going to stop right here. I don't want to overwhelm your mind, your heart, your brain, or your body as we're talking about such a serious topic as this: why marriage counseling fails. Is the problem the marriage or the counselor? As I told Dr. David Hawkins before we started recording, I'm just so thankful he wrote this book, because as a marriage and family specialist, I've worked with so many marriages, and he's right. When people show up for counseling, when you decide, okay, it's time, everybody is at a different stage of clarity. And I just wanted to add a few things to our conversation here today that Dr. Hawkins writes in his book on page 64. He writes that some of the signs of just feeling like this marriage is over, some of the signs, some of these moments of clarity might look like you start feeling a lot of self-doubt. You start feeling chronically devalued by your mate. Your partner no longer makes an effort to improve the relationship. So these are all moments of aha. Wait a minute. My husband's not even trying to improve our relationship anymore. That's clarity. That's what that means, to have clarity and to have it in phases or stages. You no longer wish or choose to make the effort, because it is an effort. It is hard work. You no longer support or listen to each other. We did a beautiful series here on the podcast called The Hallways of Home. And in that, we talked about, are you just passing one another in the hallways of your home? Are you just passing each other? Shouting out a to-do list or a checklist, or so-and-so needs to be here at this time, so make sure that happens, or what? What are the hallways of your home saying? What happens when you walk across the threshold of your front door, back door, side door, and enter into the hallways of your home? What's the emotional, spiritual, relational atmosphere of your home? I write a lot about that in my very, very first book, Rock Solid Families. Other signs of clarity are you feel a diminishing or a decreasing or maybe even an absence of intimacy. You feel an increased sense of we're just fighting and stonewalling and shutting down and or maybe you're daydreaming about being single. Thinking about that a lot. Now, I will add there, I think that's probably a very normal thing when you've been married a very, very long time, that you just think, man, some days I just like to be single. I think that's normal. But when you start to really daydream about it and fixate on it, and it becomes in the forefront of your mind, then it is a dangerous signal. He also gives us these cues. Pages 65 all the way through 75, actually, in the chapter Autopsy of a Failed Marriage. Oh, it's so hard, but so good. He says you will see yourself move into these final stages of relationship dissolution. One is resignation. We've all felt resignation, especially after we've tried something. We know to change things and it doesn't happen. Maybe we didn't even try everything, but we've tried everything we knew to do at the time. And I've even seen that within my own coaching and counseling here in my practice. You can just tell that both parties are not willing to put in the time, effort, work, give the grace, read the books, or listen to podcasts, or do homework. You can tell. I can have my finger on the pulse really from the very beginning of time. But then I have seen all of a sudden it just start to click. Sometimes you'll feel this resignation in that you've exhausted all your resources. I can't tell you how many times people come to me and go, well, you're our last chance. Well, that's just not good. You can't put that kind of hope in any one person. You feel a depletion of your energy, and you have slipped into resignation partially as a way of protecting yourself from any further discouragement. Another sign of clarity or a moment of alertness is, he says, do not resuscitate divorce. And Dr. Hawkins and I talk about this a lot. We never, ever want to see a divorce happen. But there are times. There are times. So he says, separating is one thing. Divorce is another matter altogether. There is a huge span between choosing to separate, which leaves some room for reconciliation and resuscitation, and filing for divorce, which is so very final. Many couples separate for years. They have no real hope for reconciliation, but neither spouse has enough courage or clarity to make the final decision. Many couples separate for years, living in a no man's land. They're not married. They're not divorced. And remember, there's not judgment here. We're just talking about a subject and trying to get more clarity. They have no real hope, as I just read, but neither one of them has the courage or the clarity. But it also could be a means of they need health insurance or they need help with the bills. There's a myriad of reasons. So for today, for part one, we just want to take time out of our very, very busy lives and take a deep breath and just look at our marriage. Maybe take some time with your mate, with your partner, and listen together. And go back in the archives. There are some really powerful podcast episodes that have to do with the hallways of our home, with how to have a safe and secure home, and how to really have healthy communication, which is the foundation for a great marriage. So until next time, I pray that you guard your heart, that you take care of your heart above all else, because you know that absolutely everything in your life and in your spheres of influence is affected by what's inside of your heart. And if you would be so kind, Heartlifters, would you please pop over to Apple Podcast and leave a review of the show? You have no idea how much that would increase the influence and the span of listeners that we could reach. You just have to leave 1 line, 2 lines. And over on JanelleRaridan.com/podcast, I make it so easy for you. You just scroll down to the bottom and you will see exactly how to do that. I've laid it out for you. I'd be so appreciative.
Thanks for listening today. It was great having you here. For even more great content and resources, please join the Stronger Everyday online community at JanelleRaridan.com. Always remember, you, my friend, have value, worth, and dignity.